Many seasons ago, in a quiet and dusty village named Nabari, lived a young girl called Zina, the heartbeat of her parents and the pride of every elder in the community. Her parents, Kweku and Ama, were millet farmers who worked under the punishing sun but held on to one glowing hope, that Zina would one day rescue them from a life of hardship. She was beautiful, respectful, sharp-minded, and full of promise. Though poor, her parents sacrificed everything they had. They sold their only piece of land, borrowed from Susu groups, and even gave up Ama's last chicken just so Zina could attend Madoa University. She was the first in their family to ever get such an opportunity. Kweku would beam with pride, saying, "She will finish school, get a fine job in Fulara, and change our story." Zina left for the university full of dreams and determination, and in her early days, she worked hard, attended every lecture, and kept her focus. But all of that changed in her second year, when she met Dabo, a rich, charming young man from East Ghani, who swept her into a world of gifts, expensive meals, and sweet words that made her heart flutter. Before long, she fell deeply in love, and started sleeping with him. One morning, Zina felt something unusual. Her body felt different, her appetite strange, and her heart uneasy. She brushed it off as exam stress, but after 2 moons passed with no sign of her monthly cycle, dread took over. She was pregnant. Tears streamed down her face as she cried, "What will I tell my parents? After all they sacrificed for me?" Desperate and terrified, she called Dabo and told him, "I'm carrying your child." But he only laughed and said, "If you're pregnant, that's your problem. You think you're the only girl I've touched? Leave me out of it." Zina sobbed, "You're the only man I've ever been with. This is your child." But Dabo ended the call and blocked her. Just like that, he was gone. Weeks later, Zina returned to Nabari with a swollen belly. Her mother collapsed upon seeing her. Her father said nothing for days. Gossip roared through the village like wildfire. Ama stopped attending women's church gatherings. Kweku began drinking again. One night he shouted, "After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us? You ruined yourself for some useless boy who won't even marry you." Zina retreated into silence, spending her days locked in her room, crying. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl named Tema, but no joy filled the house. The grandparents never called her by name, only saying, "That child." Her grandfather never held her. Her grandmother hissed whenever she cried. To them, Tema was the shadow that stole their daughter's future. Zina slowly began to believe it too. She remained in the village, working with her mother on the farm, washing people's clothes by the stream, and selling yams at the roadside just to survive. Many times she begged to return to school, but her mother would lash out, saying, "You want us to sell our kidneys now? So you can go and carry another pregnancy?" After that, Zina stopped asking. Instead, she worked harder, taking on all sorts of jobs, yet nothing she did could change how her parents felt. They hated her daughter, refused to let her eat their food, and left it to Zina alone to provide for her. 3 years passed. Zina turned 23, and Tema, now almost 4, danced and laughed around the compound with the joy only children understand. But Zina had no laughter left. Every day she woke before dawn, hawking bread, fetching firewood, washing elders' feet for coins, but the money vanished like smoke. Each night her father's voice would rise, bitter and sharp. "If you had focused, you'd be in an office in Fulara today, not here, dirty and dragging that cursed child behind you." Zina said nothing. She would rock Tema to sleep while her own heart broke in silence, wondering if any light could ever shine again in her life. Zina's life in Nabari grew heavier with each passing day, and her parents' sharp words began to pierce her like thorns beneath bare feet. At night, while Tema slept, Zina would turn to the wall and cry quietly, burying her sobs so the little girl wouldn't hear. She loved her daughter deeply, more than her own breath, but the pain she carried made Tema feel like a chain, clasped tight around her neck, pulling her down into a sea of regret. She often thought to herself, if Tema hadn't come, maybe my life would have turned out differently. And then came the suitors, one by one. They started showing interest, drawn by her glowing beauty that not even hardship could erase. But the moment they discovered she had a child, they vanished like mist at sunrise. Some were bold enough to mock her to her face. One man sneered and laughed, saying, I don't do second-hand goods, you're fairly used. Xena held back, tears as laughter rang in her ears, but something inside her began to shift. Bitterness started to grow like weeds in a garden, and she found herself in the quiet of frustration, looking at Tema and whispering, if not for you, my life would have been better. One hot afternoon, walking home from the market with sweat trickling down her back, she stopped mid-step and whispered aloud, I cannot keep living like this. Like a story everyone mocks. She had tried selling firewood, fruit, even cooked yam by the roadside, but nothing was enough to feed herself and her daughter, let alone help her parents. Without my education, what future do I have? She thought. That evening, a hard decision began to take root. If education had slipped away and business had failed, perhaps the only way forward was to find a wealthy man, someone to pull her out of the mud. But first, she had to do the unthinkable, separate herself from the very child who stood between her and that dream. She returned home, heart pounding, and told her parents of her decision. To her shock, they didn't resist. In fact, they encouraged her. Yes. Please, take that girl and go. Remove this bad luck from our lives, Amma said. You could have been a queen in Fulara if not for that child, Kwiku added. A week later, Xena packed a small bag, took Tema by the hand, and traveled to the home of Auntie Nuru, a distant cousin of her mother's, whom they hadn't seen in 15 years. Nuru was a rough, sharp-tongued woman with a loud laugh and harder heart. When Xena explained everything to her, how she needed to leave Tema behind so she could find a husband, Nuru scoffed and said coldly, So why didn't you end the pregnancy when you had the chance? Foolish girl. If I were in your shoes, with a ticket to university and a bright future, I would have taken care of that mistake long ago. What did you gain by keeping her? Nothing. Just this burden now standing in my yard. Then she added, but fine. If you want to dump her here, so you can chase men, that's your choice. I do need a girl to run errands and sweep. She'd be useful. Xena's eyes filled with tears, but she felt cornered. The dream of a better life still flickered in her heart, and if this was the price, she would pay it. Kneeling before Tema, she sobbed and held her daughter's tiny hands. Tema, listen to me. From today, you must never call me Mama again. From now on, I'm Auntie Xena. Auntie Nuru is your new mother. Listen to her. Respect her. Do everything she says, and you won't have any trouble. Tema looked at her with wide, confused eyes and asked, Mama, what are you saying? Are you leaving me? Please, no. I don't want to stay here. Take me home. But Xena stood up, wiped her tears, and walked away without turning back. That chapter of her life was closed. 2 months later, Xena's dream came walking toward her, tall, confident, wearing Italian leather shoes and a fragrance that whispered wealth. His name was Mr. Kojo, and she met him at a French-themed engagement party in the city of Fulara. He was everything she had once prayed for as a girl, rich, polite, handsome, and generous. He drove a black Range Rover, lived in a serviced apartment in East Ghani, and made money flow like water from a calabash. Within weeks, they grew close, and soon he proposed. The wedding was grand, a glittering ceremony that made half of Nabari speechless. Her parents danced until their knees gave out, declaring to all, Our Shane has become glory. Xena wore gold lace and diamond earrings, smiling like a woman reborn. The day she married Mr. Kojo felt like the heavens had split open and poured blessings over her. Married life was like a dream. Their home in East Ghani had a swimming pool that glistened like the sea, a small private gym, and a maid who made her bacon and eggs every morning. Weekends were filled with laughter, outings to places like the Mango Lounge and Island Grove, and luxury trips to Dubai, Seychelles, and London. Mr. Kojo treated her like royalty, posting their pictures online with captions like, "My queen," "My heartbeat," and "My world." Zina wore silk robes, carried leather bags, and started mingling with the wives of other rich men. She even joined the East Ghani Wives Association, a WhatsApp group where women posted about their spa days. Imported furniture and private chefs, she felt seen. She felt loved. And she began sending money back home regularly. Her parents even built a new house, something they'd never imagined was possible. The people of Nabari no longer walked barefoot to their farms or returned home with aching backs and empty pockets. Now they lifted their heads high and said, "Our daughter is a great woman in Fulara." Life had bloomed like the first rains of planting season. It was sweet, rich, and beautiful. But as the second year of Zina's marriage passed, a dark cloud began to hover. No children came. Worry slowly crept into Zina's bones, and she began chasing answers, first through hospital visits, then through herbs, prayers, fertility, rituals, and all-night spiritual vigils, but nothing worked. She often sat alone, confused and desperate, whispering to herself, "I gave birth before. I know I can conceive, so why now?" Doctors examined her and shook their heads gently. There was nothing wrong with her. And that made it worse. In the early years, Mr. Kojo tried to soothe her pain with soft words and warm arms. He would embrace her and whisper, "Don't worry, my queen. You are the air I breathe. You're more than enough for me." But sweet words have a shelf life, and by the 5th year, everything changed. Mr. Kojo stopped coming home on time. He locked his phone with a fingerprint, disappeared for weeks without notice, and whenever Zina asked where he had been, he would glare and mutter, "Don't stress me, woman." The distance grew like a river in flood. And then one evening, it all shattered. Mr. Kojo returned with a young, radiant woman named Dina. Standing in their living room, he calmly declared, "This is my new wife." Zina froze, staring at him in disbelief as tears filled her eyes. "What are you saying? How can you bring another woman into our sacred home, our bond?" she cried. But Mr. Kojo shrugged and replied coldly, "I need children. I'm not asking you to leave. Stay if you want. Just know your place." Zina collapsed into sobs. "After everything we built together?" she asked. He laughed, the kind of laugh that cuts deep, and sneered, "Built what? You came with nothing. You still are nothing." And just like that, her world crumbled. Within 2 moons, Mr. Kojo stuffed her belongings into 2 small suitcases, threw them outside the gate, and shouted, "Go back to wherever you came from. I spent all my wealth on you and got nothing. Not even a crippled child. Nothing." Zina begged. She knelt on the hot pavement, sobbing, pleading. But he turned his back and walked away. She was left standing under the burning sun of Fulara, homeless, broke, and alone. She had no savings. Everything she earned had gone to personal upkeep or been sent back to her parents who had built a new house with her money and now lived comfortably. Ashamed and rejected, she couldn't bear returning to Nabari, knowing her parents would only see her as a failed investment. Still, she reached out to her elite friends, hoping someone would offer a hand. But the moment they learned her husband had replaced her, and that the new wife was already pregnant, they quietly distanced themselves. To them, she no longer belonged among the wives of the wealthy. Zina wept like a wounded child and boarded a dusty bus back to Nabari. When she arrived, her parents were not happy to see her. Her father frowned, arms folded, as he asked, "Why are you back? What happened?" judging by your face in those bags. It's nothing good." Zina dropped to the ground and sobbed, "Mama ... Papa ... Kojo has thrown me out. He married someone else. I have nothing left." But neither Amma nor Kwaku offered her comfort. Their faces were stiff with disappointment. She had been their golden goose, the one who fed them, built their new home, and freed them from farming. Now her return threatened to return them to the hardship they had long escaped. And far from the dusty paths of Nabari, in the glowing city of Fulara, fate had been shaping a different tale, a story of pain turned power. Tema, Zina's abandoned daughter, had walked a road far more brutal than her mother ever knew. After being left with Auntie Nuru, her life became a daily fight for survival. Nuru treated her like a slave, beating her without reason, starving her for days, using her as a servant, not a child. By the time Tema turned 14, she couldn't take it anymore. One night, she ran away, barefoot and alone. She wandered the streets, sometimes sleeping in kiosks, sometimes under a bridge in the rough parts of Keishi. Life was merciless. She had been raped twice by men who lured her with promises of help. She sold water in plastic sachets. She cleaned toilets. She worked in local restaurants. She scrubbed floors in strangers' homes. She knew what it meant to suffer. But one evening, while walking alone and humming softly to herself, her voice caught the attention of a man passing by, a music producer named Kajo. He stopped in his tracks, stunned by the beauty of her voice. "Sing again," he whispered. She did, and he knew instantly this girl was meant for more. He took her under his wing, trained her, signed her, and within a year, Tema transformed. She released an album that shook the country. Her songs topped every radio chart. She performed at weddings, festivals, award nights. Her name was on everyone's lips. She signed with a massive record label in Lagos. She bought a 2-story house in East Ghani Hills and rolled through the streets in a white Range Rover. The girl who once cried under bridges was now the woman who lit up stadiums with her voice. Whole of Fulara, no, the entire nation, had fallen in love with Tema. Her music carried the pain of betrayal, the fire of survival, and the sweetness of hope. People sang her songs on buses, at weddings, and while sweeping their courtyards. Yet what they didn't know was that every word she sang came from her own scars. She was telling her story of the mother who left her, of nights she cried alone, of the world that nearly crushed her. And back in a small, quiet room in Nabari, Zina, now weathered, aged, and worn, was sweeping the floor when she looked up and saw a familiar face on the TV screen. Her heart skipped. She gasped. Her broom fell. "That's my daughter. That's my Tema." She cried, falling to her knees as tears poured freely down her face. She stared at the screen in disbelief. The child she had abandoned, left with a cruel cousin, never visited, never supported, now stood before thousands, shining, powerful, and beloved. Shame stabbed her chest like a spear. But more than shame was the ache of longing. She knew Tema had every right to hate her. Yet something inside her, perhaps the ghost of motherly love she had buried long ago, pushed her to go see her child, even if only once. 2 days later, without telling a soul, Zina boarded a worn-out minibus to Fulara. She carried nothing but her bag, her fear, and a memory, the address she had heard Tema mention once in a TV interview. When she reached the gated mansion, her mouth fell open. There were luxury cars, marble statues, and golden doors. She stared at the house like a beggar outside a palace. Mustering courage, she told the guards, "Please ... I'm here to see Tema." The guards looked her over with disgust. "And who are you, madam?" one asked, barely hiding his irritation. I'm her mother," Zina replied, her voice shaking. They burst out laughing like she had told a foolish joke. "You? Her mother? Madam, please. Do you know how Many people come here saying the same thing every week. Leave here now, one of them snapped. Zina dropped to her knees, sobbing. Please, tell her it's Zina, from Nabari. Her real mother is here. Please ... Moved slightly one guard. Reluctantly stepped inside to make a call. A few minutes later, he returned and said coldly, My madam said she's not interested. You should leave the gate. Zina's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She stayed there, kneeling on hard cement, her tears flowing into the dust. Please, let me just see her once. I was foolish. I was scared. I didn't know better. I want to make it right. Let me use the rest of my life to show her I'm sorry, she begged. But the guards stood still as rocks. Madam doesn't want to see you. Go. Still, Zina refused to leave. Hours passed. Her legs trembled. Her stomach grumbled. But she remained there like a statue of regret. Just as the sky turned orange with evening sun, a sleek black car rolled out of the compound. Zina's eyes widened. Inside was Tema. Without thinking, she ran toward the vehicle, waving frantically. Tema! It's me, Zina, your mother. The car slowed. Zina's heart leapt. Hope flickered. Maybe she would listen. Tema turned her head slowly, looked directly at the woman kneeling before her, and said in a voice cold as winter, I have no mother. My mother died long ago. Then, without another word, she rolled up the window, and the car drove off into the glowing Fulara night. That night, Zina slept at the gate, curled up like a forgotten dog. She wept until her throat ached, until there were no more tears left. And when the morning sun rose, she had no choice but to return to Nabari. Her parents asked no questions when she arrived. Her face said everything. Years passed like dust through fingers. Kweku and Amma grew old and weak, and Zina still lived. With them, each day a battle for survival. She fetched water, carried firewood, and sold kava and cassava at the roadside just to feed them. Some days, they went to bed hungry. Meanwhile, in Fulara, Tema's star never dimmed. She didn't stop at music. She returned to school, taking night classes at the University of Ghana. She graduated with honors. She bought another home in the lush hills of Trosaku. Then, she opened a foundation that gave scholarships to girls abandoned like she had been, offering them books, beds, and protection from predators. Tema became a voice of hope for thousands. Her songs broke streaming records. Her face appeared on billboards from Lagos to Johannesburg. Years later, she married a kind man and had 2 beautiful children. Her life was full, whole, and she never looked back. Though she had forgiven her mother and grandparents in her heart, she wanted no connection. Not ever again. Not in this lifetime. And so Zina lived on in Nabari, forgotten, aging, surviving. A mother who once abandoned her child, now abandoned by time.